Hello, welcome to my studio. This is your instructor Linda, and this is video workshop number 2 on loose coil variations. If you have not watched my previous video, video workshop number 1 on the 5-petal flower foundation exercise, I do strongly recommend that you go back and watch that video first before watching this one. Although my videos can certainly be watched independently, I do design them to be watched in sequence. Every video will build on the foundation and techniques that we learned in previous videos, and each video will help to lay the foundation for future videos. So it just makes more sense to watch them in the order in which I have recorded them. So let's begin with a brief recap of what we learned in the last video, which was on the 5-petal flower foundation exercise. So we learned basic techniques on rolling the paper around a quilling tool called the quilling needle. We learned the difference between going clockwise, which was overhand, and the difference between going counterclockwise, which was underhand. We learned the term loose hand, which means you're pulling the titer in a more relaxed fashion, and the tight hand, where you're pulling the paper harder and creating tighter coils. We also learned the gluing techniques and how to avoid getting too much glue in your project. We learned 3 basic pinching techniques, which is the free pinch, the gather and pinch, the controlled pinch. And we also learned how the different types of pinches affect the coil, as well as where we pinch and how hard we pinch. We learned basic assembly techniques, as well as gluing and alignment in assembling your quilling elements. So this particular workshop on loose coil variation will be concentrating on the pinching and forming part of the 5-petal flower foundation exercise. So we're going to be learning 17 types of loose coils in this particular workshop. And although that certainly does not cover every single type of modified or varied loose coils out there, it will cover you for the majority of the projects that you are likely going to be tackling in the future. So let's begin the exercise by pulling out my cheat sheet. So in this cheat sheet, we have 8 different types of loose coils that we will cover first. And you will notice that the very first thing on this particular list is actually not even a loose coil, it's actually a tight coil. And the reason the tight coil is there is because the tight coil is the precursor to all of the loose coils. Whenever you're forming a quilling element in the needle form, you will always start with the tight coil, and then every coil after that is derived from that tight coil. So here we go. I'm going to pop this tight coil that I made earlier onto that list and finish the first project. So we're going to move on to the next one, which is the loose coil. And when we take the tight coil off of the needle and allow it to relax and open up, it goes from a tight coil to a loose coil. When we close up or glue the ends of the loose coil so that the circle will no longer move, it now has become a closed loose coil. Now, most people do use those two terms interchangeably, so oftentimes when they say loose coil, what they actually mean is a closed loose coil. So I'm going to grab a loose coil here. By the way, if you're following along on the exercise, you may want to make a whole bunch of quilling elements to follow along with this workshop. You certainly don't have to make as many as I did, but I just wanted to be sure that I wasn't going to run out during this video. So the next loose coil variation that we see on this sheet is actually a oval loose coil. But for now, I'm actually going to skip over that particular variation, and I'm going to go directly into the teardrop one. And the reason why I'm doing that is because in the last workshop, when we learned the 3 different basic types of pinching techniques, I did use a teardrop as the demonstration variation for that particular workshop. So let's grab another coil here. So this is a round loose coil, and we are going to turn it into the teardrop. So I'm going to do all types of variations of the pinching on the teardrop that we learned in the last workshop. So I'm going to start with the free pinch. So first thing we always do, of course, before pinching is we look for that connection mark. Make sure that we turn it in an orientation so that it is hidden in our project when we're done, because we do want it to look nice. So here we go. In the free pinch, my grip is on the side of the coil, and the pinching is done with the coils in the center basically moving wherever they want in the project. Most of the time, they will move in the opposite direction of the pinch. So in this free pinch, you can see that the coil is mostly on one side, and there is very little of the folds or the spines on the other side. Now, in what kind of project would you use this particular type of teardrop? Most commonly for me, I use this particular shape whenever I'm doing things like insect heads, grasshoppers, for example. The reason why is the circle on the far side of the quilling element kind of gives it a very defined eyeball-looking like appearance. And it gives my grasshoppers more realism when I use this particular type of pinch for its head. Okay, so I'm going to grab another loose coil here. And we are going to, on this particular loose coil, do the controlled pinch. So in the controlled pinch, the grip is on the top and the bottom of the coil, pinching it between your fingers like so. And you can control the position of the coils inside this coil as you like before pinching. So in this particular one, I'm going to put the coil in the center, and I'm going to hold it with my fingers so that all the coils are stationary, and I'm going to pinch on the opposite end. For this particular example, I'm going to pinch very far into the belly, and I'm going to pinch pretty hard. So here we go. Controlled pinch. So here is our second teardrop to add to our collection here, and you can see the differences in the appearance of the coil after the pinch, even though it is the same teardrop coil variation. So the last one I'm going to do is I'm going to do the gather and pinch. So in the gather and pinch, we use the tweezer, and we grab from the center of the coil to the edge, making sure that we grab every single coil in that loop, and it should turn out like that. We can control the appearance or the bluntness of the coil pinch area by sliding our tweezers to catch more of the tweezer, or further to the tip to get less. Now for this particular technique, I do encourage that you get a very thin, slender, strong tweezer to do this technique. It works out the best if you do. Okay, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to pinch in the tweezer area, and we get this nice round blunter shape. So I often like to use the gather and pinch or this type of pinching in my sakura blossoms. Kind of gives it that very soft look that is very pleasing when you're doing blossoms such as that. So I'm going to also show you a variation off of controlled pinch that one of my students in my class actually brought to my attention. And when she actually did this pinch, she said that she had learned it actually off of a video on YouTube, and she had incorrectly called it the gather and pinch. And the reason why that was the case was because in this particular technique, even though it was a controlled pinch, she used her tweezer basically to hold the coil in place. Now the difference between what she did and a true gather and pinch is rather than pinching on the area where the tweezer is holding the coil, she actually pinched on the opposite side, like that, right? So the difference between this and a standard gather and pinch is that you are not pinching again in the areas where the coil is being held by the tweezer, but you're pinching on the opposite end. So that is actually a form of controlled pinch, because rather than using your hand to hold the coil, you are simply using the tweezer to hold it. And the tweezer is actually controlling the position of the coil and not your fingers. However, it is still considered the same technique. So if I take this coil and I compare it to this one here, which is also a controlled pinch, you can see that the shape and the appearance of the loose coil is very different. In this one, we have all of the circles in the center gathered to one end, and we've got lots of these little spines coming up the rest of the element. And in this one, it is more central, and the curvature on the spine is different from this one here, right? But both of them are the same techniques. So I'm going to put that into our little teardrop practice section here. So we are now complete with the teardrop. So let's go back to the oval, which is the one that I skipped here. And the oval is a very, very easy technique to do. Let's grab a coil. So there are two types of pinching techniques that you can do with the oval. The gather and pinch does not work in this particular case because we are not pinching far enough down in any place for the gather and pinch to make a difference in the appearance of your coil. Most commonly, when I do the oval, I like to use the free pinch. So we grab the coil from the edge, top and bottom, and we lightly squeeze. Now, whether you squeeze hard and whether you squeeze light and where you squeeze certainly will make a difference in the appearance of the oval, as it has on all of our previous projects. So this one here, I did a very soft squeeze in the center, so that is the appearance of the coil when I do it that way. So I'm going to put that right over there. I'm going to grab another coil and I'm going to do the same free pinch, except this time I'm going to vary it by pinching pretty hard, almost to the center. So if we look at the appearance of these two oval, quite different, isn't it? Difference is how hard we pinched. This one's got more spines, and this one is essentially very similar to our round loose coil in the center. Okay, so free pinch. I am now going to do a controlled pinch for the same oval, and in the controlled pinch, of course, we decide where to place our oval. So we're going to, in this case, pull the coil all the way to the side like that, okay? And we're going to be pinching the top and the bottom just like we did with the free pinch, and let's see how this looks. So light pinch. Okay, very similar to the appearance of the free pinch. All right, so let's do the same thing, and we're going to vary the pressure of our pinch. So just like the last one, I'm going to pull it to the side, and now I'm going to pinch really hard, and let's see how it looks. Okay. Okay, so in the controlled pinch, we have pushed the coil to the side, still in appearance of an oval shape, but very different from that one where the circle is centered. There we go. So, as you can see, the importance of the pinching techniques on the final formation of your loose coil variations, and how you want it to appear hopefully will become more predictable as you become more accustomed with the different types of pinching and the different controls in the pinch, like pressure and position of the pinch, whether you're pinching close to the end or the close to the edge. So I'm going to do one more oval pinch. Okay, and in this particular one, I am also going to pull it to the side, And rather than pinching in the center as I have been before, I'm going to pinch more on the edge. Okay. Now, doesn't that look a lot like the rounder version of that grasshopper eyeball that I did in the teardrop? I think so. Okay, so there are the ovals in the various different pinching positions that we did. So now we're going to go down to this fifth one right here, which is the curved teardrop. So the curved teardrop is done as a variation of this regular teardrop. And all curved teardrops pretty much start off as regular teardrops, and then we want to add an additional little curvature to the side. So let's grab another coil here, and I'm going to do this as a controlled pinch, and I'm going to pinch. There we go. So we start off with our teardrop. So now we're doing the teardrops. We can choose to flip the tip either that way, or we can flip it this way. So with the direction of the curvature of the spine, or against the direction of the curvature of the spine. So let's see how they turn out doing it that way. So I'm going to pinch and I'm going to roll. And let's take a look at how it turns out. So this one is in the direction of the spine. So there we go. And we're going to take another one, do the same pinch. Okay, so now we're going to go instead the opposite direction of the spine. So the spine is curving this way in this particular one, and we're going to go the other way. And let's see if it changes the way it looks. Does a little bit, doesn't it? So in this particular one, when we went in the direction of the spine, the appearance is slightly different when we go anti-direction of the spine. So in these particular curved teardrops, I just used my fingers in order to make that little curve on the curved teardrop. But in some projects, we would want a little bit more of a curve beyond what we are able to do with our fingers. So I'm going to show you a type of formation technique in order to add curvatures to the various different types of quilling elements that you have in order to change their variation. So let's grab another coil here, and curved teardrop starts off as regular teardrop. Let's find that connection. There we are. So again, controlled pinch. And again, in this exercise, when you're following along, you don't have to use the controlled pinch like I am right now. You can choose your own variation, experiment to see how each of the different types of pinches and pinching techniques will affect the final result of your element. As you customize yourself to the different techniques, you will start to notice patterns, and you'll be more able to predict how the coil will turn out after you've pinched. I can go into detail how to expect the results. However, it's easier if you do it yourself and kind of intuitively learn how things look after you've done. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to pinch it, and we have, here we are, our tear-shaped coil. And in this one, I am actually going to use a forming tool in order to make that little curve in the teardrop. Now, if you're in my class and you have the forming tool kit of all different diameters, you can certainly use that. In this particular workshop, I'm going to use the basic one, which has one diameter and a little forming ball at the end of it. So when we are creating curvatures in the curved teardrop, or here in the curved marquee, which we will cover in a little bit, you actually want to use the shaft of your quilling tool, forming tool. And if you have this particular needle, you can also use the tip of your needle or the base of your needle, which are two different diameters from this forming tool right here. So let me show you how to use the forming tool. Now, most people, when they first learn the forming tool, they kind of do that type of motion and try to curve it exactly like they would curl a ribbon. And that's actually not the way you want to do it. How you want to use this tool is you want to put the primary area that you need to curve onto the tool with your thumb like so, and then you wrap it around the tool. And the amount of curvature that you are left over with will depend on the diameter of the tool, whether you're using a very small one like that, or whether you're using a very blunt one with a larger diameter like that. So in this particular one, I'm using the standard forming tool. And again, the grip is thumb with your device and the paper pinched in between, and then we roll the element around the forming stylus in order to get that curvature, as opposed to a kind of ribbon curling motion. So there we go. Can you see how in this particular curved teardrop that the curve is much more pronounced than in that one, which was done with your fingers, right? So I'm going to do another curved teardrop. So we're going to make our standard teardrop first. Here we go. And in this particular one, I am going to be using the tip of my needle, which has a very small diameter, to do the same thing. And let's take a look at how it looks. Now, if you don't have this particular quilling needle and you have one of the other quilling needles, do be careful that your needle is strong enough to be doing what we're doing. Otherwise, you might damage your needle. So if you have this particular one, the needle is quite strong and we can do this. So let's take a look here. We're going to grasp the paper with our thumb between our thumb and the needle, and we're going to rotate so that the element is curling around the needle like that, right? So remember, we're not making this motion like we're curling paper. It is thumb and forefinger on the stylus. In this case, it's the tip of our needle, and rotate. So you can see, because the diameter of what we're using to curl in this particular element is very small, we do end up with a very, very pronounced curve, as opposed to this one, which is the softer curve done with a larger diameter, and this one here, which is done with our fingers, which is an even larger diameter. So in curling this, the way we get various different variations in the curve is by varying the diameter of the tool that we're using to curl. So the other thing to keep in mind as well when we curl is that we may curl, as I did previously, in more than one spot. And if you're curling in more than one spot and slowly moving from the tip of the curve into the interior, then you get a much more pronounced curve as if you did it just once. So let's use this one as the example. So this one here, I grasp it many times with my tool, working as we go inwards in order to get this. So what if I only did it just one time, just like that? Like that? Well, you can see if you do it just once, you end up with a softer, less exaggerated curve as if you do it multiple times. Okay, so here we go, modified teardrop. So let's go next into our marquee shaped. And the difference between the marquee shape and the teardrop shape, of course, is that the marquee is pinched on both ends. And when it's pinched on both ends like that, you can use actually all three types of pinching techniques. So if we use the free pinch, we can choose to pinch it with both hands at once, like such. Most of the time when you're using this particular free pinch, your coil will stay in the center because you are exerting pressure from the two directions. And this is what the marquee looks like in a free pinch. So now let's do the same one, and we are going to now do a controlled pinch in the marquee. So I'm going to find my connection. There we go. And in this particular one, I'm going to vary it by moving the coil all the way to the opposite side of my pinch. So I'm going to pinch. Okay, so there we have the pair. We can release it. Let's now grab it and move the coil all the way to the other side. Okay, and then pinch. Okay, so here we have the second marquee with the controlled pinch. Now the gather and pinch is rather challenging to do in the marquee. So I'm going to grab the coil with my tweezer here, right? And I'm going to pinch. So it has now become the pair, or the round one. Okay, so at this point, we can choose to either leave the coils on the one side, or we can choose to gather and pinch on the opposite ends, right? In this case, I am going to leave it on the end, and I'm going to pinch the other side. So there is our marquee. And in comparison to our free pinch there, you can see the location of the spines and the curls of the paper look pretty different. Okay, so when we did the pear or the teardrop, we also did a curved teardrop. And likewise, when we do the marquee, there is also the curved marquee. And the curved marquee can be curved evenly on both ends, or it can be done asymmetrical, where you have more curve on one side and less curve on the other. So let's grab another coil right here. Okay, so we are going to, let's do a free pinch. Free pinch. So here is our marquee. And to do a curved marquee, which is also called an S shape, a leaf, a slug shape marquee, you'll hear all sorts of different names and terminologies for the same loose coil. So do keep in mind that when you're talking to another quiller, that sometimes they may use slightly different terminology from you. Okay, so here we have the marquee, so let's change it into the curved marquee in the simplest way possible, which is to grasp the two ends and to twist. So here we have our basic curved marquee. So likewise, with the curved marquee, as in the curved teardrop, we can choose to form the coil using our tools instead. So let's start with the basic marquee. I'm going to use a free pinch. Okay, and on this one, I am now going to curve using the quilling tool. So thumb and tool, gripping the coil in the center, and then we rotate so that it curls around the tool like so. Okay, so now we have a curved marquee on the one side. Now I'm going to take the other side and I'm going to use the tip of this needle to get a really sharp curve. There we go. And I'm going to curve it in multiple areas, going from the tip into the center. So now we have a curved marquee, which is more curved on one side and less curved on the other side. Now I can think of all different sorts of different places that we can use this particular shape in our projects. Even though the basic loose coil and tight coil are the very simplest and easiest type of loose coil variations to do and quilling elements to do, do not underestimate their usefulness, because just with these two quilling elements, you have an infinite number of variations and infinite amount of potential to do quilling projects. Okay, so let's go into the next one, which is the square. Okay, so in the square, we can do, again, free pinch, or we can do controlled pinch. So let's do free pinch first. So I'm going to do this particular one by squeezing it really quite hard on the end. So we're starting with a very flat marquee. You can do a less flat marquee, of course, right? Okay, so then we'll turn it around and then we will go in the opposite direction. So you're making a marquee essentially 2 times. Okay, so then we end up with a diamond shape, which is also a type of quilling element, by the way. And if we squeeze like that, then we can get our square, right? And depending on how hard you squeeze and into the belly, you will get different coils in the center. So now I'm going to do it a different way. I am now going to do it using the controlled pinch. So top and bottom here, and I'm going to pinch one side. We get our pair. I'm going to turn it around, and I'm going to pinch the other side. We get our marquee. I'm going to hold it in the center again, and I'm going to pinch it on the edge. And we get this kind of fan shape. Hold it again in the center. And pinch, and we get our square. Okay, so, my goodness, my pinching form isn't very good today. All right, so now if we look at these 2 squares that we did in the project here. So we have this one here, which we did very far into the center for the pinching using a free pinch, and this one using a controlled pinch. So you can see in the controlled pinch, we more or less retained our spiral in the center. And in the free pinch where we went into the center, we get a lot more bends and spines. Kind of looks like it's almost on the verge of being a vortex shape. Vortexes will be covered in a different class. Okay, so just like the teardrop and the curved teardrop are based on each other, and the marquee can be made into the curved marquee, the square can be made into the diamond, or I most commonly call this a star, because usually I would call this shape a diamond. But anyways, here we go. So diamond, we start off with a square, and I'm going to do quickly a square by doing 2 marquees. Squish, squish. Here we go. Square. Okay, so here's our square. So how do we achieve the diamond from this? Well, we can do it with our fingers by pinching and squeezing like that. Oh my goodness, not doing very well today. All right, so here is our basic star. Okay, so now we can also use the quilling tool as well to make the star. So let's start off with making our square base first. I'm going to use the free pinch because this is the easiest one to use for this particular shape. And so there's our square. Okay. And we can use our tool now. Curling it around our tool. I usually use my fingers because I find doing it with the tool is a little bit harder, but the nice thing about the tools is we do get much rounder, sharper star corners. There we go. And there is our diamond. Okay, I'm going to take a brief break to get a drink of water, and then we'll continue on our session.